Howdy, howdy, y'all. It is another I Am That episode. Episode 88. Knowledge by the mind is not true knowledge. So, what does Nisargadatta Maharaj mean by this? What is he talking about with this? And what context is all this in? Well, it looks like this questioner has been, you know, talking with him for a while. It references some of his previous teaching, references previous conversations and whatnot. So this is interesting. This is kind of probably a part of a bigger back and forth in a way. But what I do appreciate about this conversation and its context and whatnot, first of all, there's just certain parts of it I appreciate that are just kind of I find particularly interesting and random. So for one, I don't know if there's any other conversation like this. I would have to look back and see some of the other ones, but I don't think I remember any conversation where it is the questioner who who actually is the last one to, who's the last one to say something. Normally, it's like the Nisargadatta Maharaj will say something big and profound and deep and blah blah blah. And it's interesting in this one, it's the questioner, and he just sees, yeah, see your point again. You have robbed me of my question, because he kept referencing in the conversation how like the Nisargadatta Maharaj, the way he talks and would say things, it would leave him like, without question, without like being able to really have a question, because you can tell throughout what's really going on. I think the big thing that you can capture from this conversation is this guy is trying to. He's like me in a lot of ways. He's something one I can relate to. Someone who wants to understand truth, understand logic, understand this thing, that thing, understand why things are the way they are. While the Sikaraha Maharaj is like, no, 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 his whole lesson is really about understanding what things are not. And that's how you get to the truth and understanding of things, is that you really can only understand what things are not. Like that's like the truth that you can understand. And I get it, but I'm very sympathetic with this questioner and in the way he's approaching all this. He is approaching it in the way I would too. The questioner right away does bring up one of the Sagradatta's teachings, Maharaj Nisargadatta Maharaj's teachings that I like, or a metaphor that he uses, and that's this idea of like the subtle body and the mental body, almost acting like it's whirling, just as a whirling mirror converts sunlight into a manifold pattern of streaks and colors. So does the subtle body convert the simple light of the shining self into a diversified world. Like he references, and that's I really like that metaphor. Once again, the Sagrada Maharaj, of course, just knocking it out of a park with a good metaphor. It's almost kind of like saying like, it's like saying Babe Ruth. Oh man, look at Babe Ruth doing a home run. You're just like, you're not surprised, but it's still good to see. It's still fun to watch because it's a home run. Like watching a professional. If you're like into boxing or in any sort of professional sports, watching the professional, if it's like, oh, they just did it again, there's still something nice about seeing them do it because they're doing it at that professional level. And the Sagrada Maharaj is, to me, he's like that equivalent, especially when it comes to metaphors. A lot of times they're very simple metaphors too. It doesn't get too complicated, too convoluted. That's sometimes, I think that's a lot to what's a good metaphor. But like I say, that's here or there. One point. Oh, here's one point that I'd like. So, questioner, we are condemned to. So the questioner, there is also the fear of the unknown. Maharaj, who has not suffered is not afraid. Questioner, we are condemned to fear. Maharaj, until we can look at fear and accept it as the shadow of personal existence, as persons, we are bound to be afraid. Abandon all personal equations, and you shall be free from fear. It is not difficult. Desirelessness comes on its own when desire is recognized as false. You need not struggle with desire. Ultimately, it is an urge to happiness, which is natural as long as there is sorrow. Only see that there is no happiness in what you desire. And this is where I liked how the questioner we settle for pleasure. I think that's a good point. But once again, though, Maharaj flips it around. Each pleasure is wrapped in pain. You soon discover that you cannot have one without the other. Questioner. There is the experiencer and there is his experience. What created the link between the two? Maharaj. Nothing created it. It is. It is. The two are one. Questioner. I feel there's a catch somewhere, but I do not know where. Maharaj. The catch is your mind, which insists on seeing duality where there is none. And so, like I said, this is kind of like, this is really what a lot of this conversation is this him, the questioner trying to be like, oh, if it's, but things are like that, and it really can understand like that, and you said this, you mean that. And Maharaj is like, no, 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 you're missing the point. It's like the mind, your very mind is the problem. Your very mind is the problem. And like I said, actually, it's, where was that part I wanted to read to? There's another part here. Oh, yes. And so, another part here. Questioner, your working theory seems to be that the waking state is not basically different from dream, and that the dreamless sleep and dream is sleep. The three states are essentially a cause of mistaking self identification with the body. Maybe it is true, but I feel it is not the whole truth. Maharaj, we do not try to know the truth, for knowledge by the mind is not true. But you can know what is not true, which is enough to liberate you from the false. The idea that you know what is true is dangerous, for it keeps you imprisoned in the mind. It is when you do not know that you are free to investigate. And there can be no salvation without investigation. Not because non-investigation is the main cause of bondage. So in other words, yeah. So that kind of makes sense, though, right? Inherently, when you actually think about it, it's like, yeah, especially when you understand that the mind is part of the problem because it puts in with the whole identification of the mind body identification, right? And that's what's blurring the lines. That's what blurring us from this self-realization. That's the whole enterprise. That's the whole, I guess, quote unquote issue at hand, right? That's ultimately what it is. And so I say I think this is a really good chapter. I really do. Um, it is a lot. I mean, like I said, that part, those kind of parts I just explained, in terms of the understanding of the kind of the meat and bones of what the conversation is about, what their kind of concepts are kind of arguing back and forth. I think those would be about it. Uh, like I said, it's very interesting that the questioner was the one to end it. That's very interesting. Um, because in the back and forth isn't even that, like, he doesn't, because normally I've noticed he does like a Maharaj will he'll do like a very long, like kind of or long paragraph at the end worth of talking of stuff. That didn't really happen. Um, and in fact, it was more of a, yeah, because because this I will read the little last back and forth because I do it's interesting because he brings up the questioner brings up religion and whatnot, and you can kind of get to see a little bit of how what Nisargadatta Maharaj kind of what he thinks about any given like one religious institutions, even the ones that he would, probably be labeled to be belong to Hindus, So, questioner, I have found that realized people usually describe their state in terms borrowed from their religion. You happen to be a Hindu, so you talk of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, and use Hindu approaches and imagery. Kindly tell us what is the experience behind your words? What reality do they refer to? Maharaj, it is my way of talking, a language I was taught to use. Questioner, but what is behind the language? Maharaj, how can I put it into words except in negating them? Therefore, I use words like timeless, spaceless, causeless. These two are words. but as they are empty of meaning, they suit my purpose. Questioner: if they are meaningless, why use them? Maharaj: because you want words where no words apply. And then, yeah, questioner says at the very end, I can see your point. Again, you robbed me of my question. Because how do you? How do you really have any questions after you're kind of like, well, after that sort of back and forth, right? So I totally get it. Like I said, very good chapter. Highly, once again, like I said, it hasn't been a bad chapter yet. This is one of the good ones. Another kind of, you know, like I said, I've been saying that throughout this entire chapter by chapter review thing. Is that this is the hammer, nail, and each of these chapters is what is like a striking the nail, and kind of hammering the point home more and more and more until it was good. Until the structure is sturdy. So I'll let you all go. Hope you all have a excellent day. Namaste. Peace be upon you. Hare Krishna. See y'all later.